School Committee meeting for Thursday, May 12th, 2022, beginning at 6:33. This meeting will take place partially remotely pursuant to the law signed by Governor Baker on February 16th, 2022, an act further extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, which includes an extension until July 15th, 2022, of the remote meeting provisions of his March 12th, 2020 executive order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. This meeting will be recorded. And now I will call to order Ms. Scott.
You talking to me?
Yes.
Nancy Scott, present. Kind of blurred out in a minute.
Oh, sorry. Ms. Stout?
Okay. Present.
Ms. Tolley?
Present.
Ms. Games? Present. Ms. Seabrett Long? Present. And I am present. And Mr. Russell? Mr. Russell?
They present.
Present.
Present, there it is.
Perfect, thank you. Moving on to MRHS Student Representative, Ms. Charlotte Plute.
Good evening, Monomoy School Committee. Tonight I have the March and April summaries for the month. So starting with the March summary. Last month for Valentine's Day, the Monomoy Key Club made Valentine's card and delivered them to local veterans. The cards were delivered to the Chatham Veterans of Foreign Wars organization before the holiday. Bins have been placed around the school in classrooms to collect money to be donated to helping those in the Ukraine. Money for the cause will be collected until the 11th. On March 10th, the class of 2022 hosted the Harlem Wizards fundraiser to raise money for the senior trip and prom. The game was sold out with many community members and it was a fun, successful night. The guidance department has been conducting mental health checks in classes to support Monomoy students. The February Scholar Athletes of the Month were ice hockey player Gabby Barrett and basketball player Alec Brown. The Winter Sports Award Night was held on March 11th to recognize student athletes for their season. Meet the Coaches Night for the spring season was held on March 14th and the teams began tryouts for the season on the 21st. The spring musical, the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee, showed in the auditorium from March 16th through the 19th. Community members gathered to watch Monomoy students perform in the show. The All Sports Booster Club is hosting their brick fundraiser in order to raise money for all Monomoy sports teams. Bricks can be bought and engraved with a name or message and placed around the outdoor concession stands. All the money raised will go towards equipment, gear, and any other needs for the sports teams. The class of 2023 hosted a March Madness basketball tournament on March 15th. Individuals could sign up or join as a team of 5. Monomoy Sharks have had many individual achievements as well as group achievements this past month. Sophomore Annalise Langlier has been recognized for her acceptance into the FBI summer program through the Youth Leadership Program. This summer, she will be able to spend 8 days at Quantico as part of this amazing opportunity. For St. Patrick's Day, Key Club members celebrated by decorating the Monomoy Community Service Building with St. Patrick's Day decor. They also hand-wrote cards for teachers and placed them into their mailboxes on the day of the holiday. Visual and performing arts students were featured in the Beginnings exhibit at the Cape Cod Arts Center opening on March 18th. Here they were able to showcase their artistic talents. On March 25th, Monomoy 8th graders will have their 8th grade dance at the high school. Recently, the Monomoy cheer team qualified for the state champion competition. This was the first time the Monomoy cheer team has ever qualified for the states. The Diversity Club represented Monomoy High School at the Connections Conference where they met with students from other schools at Sutton High School. On March 31st, the Performance Art Department is hosting their annual Pops concert. This year, the theme is Decades of Distance. For the community. March has been a great month for Monomoy High School and with many achievements, traditions, and community activities. All right. During the month of April, there have been many new and exciting celebrations, events, and offerings at Monomoy Regional High School. To start off the month, juniors Tyler Brackett and Christy Beckley participated in Student Government Day on April 1st. Mr. Smeltzer's Latin 3 and 4 classes took a field trip to Walden Pond in Concord, Mass. to explore Henry David Thoreau's philosophies. Students enjoyed the day learning and exploring outdoors. On April 7th, many Monomoy art students were represented in the Through Young Eyes exhibit at the Cape Cod Museum of Art. The exhibit showcased students' artwork and lasted from 4 to 7 p.m. The Wellness Fair, hosted by Carolyn Freitas and senior Madeline Eberhardt, took place in the gym on April 8th. Clubs and organizations sponsored booths to inform students on different aspects of wellness. Students were able to go to the fair and participate in the fun, educational activities. The Sanskrit Club has been celebrating National Poetry Month this month by creating poetry and art posters and placing them around the school. The senior class prom took place on April 14th at Wequassett Resort and Golf Club. The Grand March took place at 5:15 where community members could come and watch. After prom took place at Harwich Community Center from 11 p.m. to 5 p.m. and was put on by parent volunteers. The class of 2025 hosted a popcorn fundraiser from April 11th through the 15th in order to raise money for their class. Throughout this month, many Monomoy students have been recognized for academic achievements. Senior Usan Zhao was the recipient of the Cape and Islands, Massachusetts, and East Coast Regional Daughters of American Revolution Good Citizens Award and Scholarship Contest. Sophomore Emily Gray was the winner of the Harwich Historical Writing Contest. The 10th grade English classes took part in the Letters About Literature competition hosted by the Massachusetts Center of the Book. Yuying Zhao received honorable mentions and Steele Ponte was a finalist in the competition. Semi-finalists included Abigail Gates, Jasper Hayes, and Lily Gould. Over April break, many students took part in trips hosted by Monomoy Regional High School. Mr. Burns took many students to Costa Rica for a science-focused trip. Mrs. Barnes took students to London, England for an English and theater-focused trip. The Monomoy sports team have all started with an amazing spring season. Overall, April has been filled with many fun events and academic achievements at Monomoy Regional High School. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments?
Wow.
You guys have been busy.
Yes.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
You
Look forward
too.
to seeing
Thank you.
again.
All right, moving right along to public comment. I see no one, so we will move on to the approval of the MRSC meeting minutes from April 14th. Do I have a motion? Ms. Gaines?
I'll move that we accept the April 14th meeting minutes as presented in our packet.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Stout?
Yes, I just have one request, and that is on page 2, number 7, where it said Sharon Stout left the call. I really didn't have a choice. I'd like it to say Sharon Stout had to leave the call, just so it would reflect that it wasn't something we were doing.
If everyone's okay with that, I can adjust that and post it with the changes.
So Would you like me to revise the motion and say, I would like to make a motion that we accept the April 14th minutes with a correction on page 2, section 7, that Sharon Stout left the call due to an emergency. Maybe we add that in.
Okay, and a second for that?
Yes. Second.
All right, any other discussion? All right, so a roll call vote. Mr. Russell?
Abstain.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Ms. Stout?
Aye.
Ms. Tolley?
Abstain.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Ms. Seabrett Long?
Abstain.
And I am an aye. All right, next we are voting to approve the MRSC meeting minutes from April 28th. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Ms. Scott?
I am an aye, so I will approve the minutes.
Ms. Stout?
Aye.
Ms. Scott, can you repeat that? Sorry.
Aye, and I'm just clarifying that though I wasn't present, I did watch the meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Tolley?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Ms. Seabrett Long?
Aye.
And I am an aye. Excellent. Moving on to reports and discussion. We have Mr. Michael Westgate here to give a report on the Westgate Fund report. Mr. Westgate,
Good evening.
welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear me?
we can hear you.
Great. I'm sorry Pam Croswell's unable to be with me as co-chair. Excuse me. We've had all the teachers who've worked so hard during COVID over the last 2 years to recognize the stresses which they've been dealing with. We anticipated there might not be any proposals for Westgate funding this year because of that. We were pleased that we did receive one, and we funded it in full. It's for Nancy Gifford, who's a 7th grade science teacher at the middle school. She was competitively selected for the Explore the Solar System conference at the University of Texas McDonald Observatory in Fort Davis, Texas, in June to 30th. It's located in the 15,000 square mile Big Bend Dark Sky Reserve between U.S. and Mexico. Both Nancy and you may be able to resurrect the Harwich Observatory. Conference costs are covered by grants that we will reimburse her for $1,500 for travel expenses and for instructional materials that she may purchase. We're going to continue the funding that we approved in 2020 for Sarah Peters to go next year, hopefully. She's a Latin teacher at the middle school. She wants to take a immersion program with other teachers in Montella, Italy. We will reimburse her $2,750 in program and travel expenses. Also, John Dixon, civics teacher at the high school, will hopefully travel to Rwanda next year with a group of educators led by Carl Wilkins. The program delves into how that country rebuilt trust among Rwandans, as well as explore their culture. We'll reimburse him $3,000 in program and travel expenses. It's John's hope to lead a global service students to Rwanda, perhaps in 2025, similar to the one he led to Tanzania in February 2019. And finally, working with Adam O'Shea and Sherry Armstrong, the librarian, we've contributed up to $2,000, which is a smart screen, supplementing what students can learn in the classroom, to be placed in the middle school lobby. materials materials may be teacher or student created, or there might be shows like Nova on PBS. The project in conjunction with Sherry Ann, and the content will be curated by her. I can give you the financial highlights if you like.
Sure.
Our endowment is $135,835. Our expendable balance at the beginning of this year was $19,195. All the commitments and the earnings on the endowment, our available balance will be $12,445 plus earnings after June 30th of this year. That's my report.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Ms. Gaines?
Just a big thank you. I really appreciate funding everything that you shared. I think it's fabulous, so thank you so very, very much.
Ms. Stout?
Yes, along that same line, I want to say how grateful I am that the Westgate Fund over decades has funded so much, really made a huge difference to not only the teachers, but the students in turn. Thank you.
I'd like to emphasize that the teachers donate all of their own time. And I have a special request for whoever's taking the minutes. Please don't use the word grants are taxable to teachers, and these are strictly reimbursements for expenses.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Westgate. We appreciate all that you've done, and I'm excited that the two teachers that were planning to go a few years ago are again getting the opportunity to plan for those trips, so that's excellent. All right, moving on to
Thank you.
our item number 2, Stepping Stones area/parcel. Request to surplus for affordable, attainable housing. And I believe Ms. Jill Goldstein is here virtually to share some information with us. Welcome, Jill.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Jeanette, Chatham Town Manager. Can you see and hear me okay?
We can.
Perfect. Okay. The Chatham Select Board has had a standing goal and community value statement for Chatham to be a vibrant, year-round community. And one of the foundations to such success is housing opportunities for all members of our community and workforce. To accomplish this, the Select Board and Affordable Housing Trustees are seeking a multifaceted approach for housing and ramped up efforts over the last few years to look at town-owned properties as well as private property acquisitions. Much success is made at the 2021 annual town meeting, and much more is ahead. In December 2021, the trustees identified the middle school parcel at Stepping Stones as a potential area for affordable or attainable workforce housing, and felt it was a good fit with the nearby neighborhood, residential neighborhood. As we worked on similar initiatives, the board at its meeting on April 12th asked review to discuss the district's future use of the 2.2 acre parcel and any other area of that leased parcel that's not currently used or planned for future use. And further, the board respectfully requests that the school committee consider declaring portion of the parcel as surplus per the lease agreement, so the town may use it for future affordable and attainable housing. I know you process, and I'm also joined today by Katie Donovan, our Director of Community Development, who will be happy to screen share the parcel and go through what the requirements are and any future requirements if the chair so desires. Thank you.
Katie, I think that would be great if you don't mind, because we do have a few members that are joining us virtually tonight.
No problem. So I'm just going to share my screen, so if you'll bear with me just a moment. So let's see. Okay, are you all able to see my screen here?
Yes.
Okay. So again, the request from the Select Board and the Affordable Housing Trust had initially identified the parcel that is between Stepping Stone Roads here and the bike trail along the back side of this area here, if you can see there. A request was made during that Select Board meeting that we also potentially explore other opportunities in this area, perhaps just to the west of the ball field, up in this area. There does appear to be some topography challenges there. And again, our initial request was really stemming from this area here that had been previously considered for a council on aging. This parcel that we're looking at here is about 2.2 acres, and you'll see from the material has approximately 614 feet of frontage. So I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding the site or any other specifics, if you have any.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion? Ms. Tolley?
Thank you. I have I guess a general question of wanting to understand the process. But we're being asked tonight to consider declaring this automatic surplus. And so I don't see that as an action item. We're not being asked to vote on that.
Correct, not tonight.
So in something along the process of if we were to vote in the future at some future meeting, what would that process be? If we were to declare it surplus, what happens next? What happens next? I would understand the process.
Ms. Seabright-Long?
So if we were in a future meeting were to declare this piece of property, the surplus portion, they would amend the current regional agreement and our lease agreement, I believe, to reflect whatever our motion is that whoever makes the motion, whatever the motion says.
It would just need to. It would just need to be the lease, and technically, I don't even think the lease necessarily needs to be modified because the lease doesn't lay out. It didn't come with sort of maps of what was school. We had a similar situation in Harwich a couple of years back where the town wanted to sort of take over maintenance of the fields behind what is now the cultural center and Harwich Elementary School. So it was literally a vote from our committee, a vote from the select board, and that was that. And, so I don't think there's anything overly formal because there's not a map attached to the lease, and it's not in the regional agreement.
And that was in the same sentence as the lease was the regional agreement. So I just reread it again. We amend the Monomoy Regional School District lease, which is separate and distinct from the regional agreement. So that's where that was coming out of my mouth. But I think that if we were to move forward, I personally would request that it's in writing in some form of a lease, the surplus of the property, if that's what we decide to do.
Ms. Gaines?
Yeah, just a curious question. It reads to me that, let's just say, like the feasibility study, am I reading this correctly that says that will be done after? So it's not going to be done before? So I guess, and it's just a curious question, why a feasibility study wouldn't come first, but that's just my question.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. So typically what we have done with the parcels in town that we're looking for, As we set aside money for feasibility studies, before we spend the money, make sure that it's something that we are moving forward with. And so, again, we believe that this land is buildable. The feasibility study would determine how many that we could build. And so, again, just to try to be good fiscal stewards, we try not to spend money to understanding whether or not we would be moving forward with certain parcels.
Ms. Seabright Long, hold on. Ms. Stout?
I can't see her, so.
Yes, this is very confusing to me because we had this discussion, this parcel before, and the members that were on the committee at the time, I don't think one person voted for giving up this land, and the comments, if we went back to look at it, as far as I know, is that lots of people said it was a safety issue. My reason was that our job as school committee members is that we're stewards of the school. It's not our business what the town does with their things, but our job is to look out for the school, and I wanted to keep the land, not knowing COVID or anything else would come. The ball field's been around a few times. The elementary school closed, and one of reasons to keep the land, and that was where I came from, but I don't know what's changed. I mean, are we saying we just like this project better than the council on aging? It seems disingenuous to take this up at all.
So Sharon, the town of Chatham asked to come and speak to us about it, so we're just having that opportunity right now. Ms. Seabright Long?
Yep, thank you. Sharon, for clarification, you're correct. It's the same presentation, I would say. It's the same piece of land we were discussing when the selectmen and I believe there was a petition group came to us, and they did a presentation about using that piece of land for the COA, and it went in the same order. They wanted us to lease the property, surplus the property back, and there would be a feasibility study at that time, I guess, for the COA. And I don't remember how that rolled out, but that didn't happen. The reasons why we did not do lease or give up that piece of property at that time, nothing's changed as far as the way we use the property, in my eyes, and our concerns for safety and everything else we talked about at that time. My question, I guess, or the way I'm looking at this, and if I were to make a motion for supporting this, I would not be making a motion for it to be specifically for low-income housing, because I don't know that the district wants to be connected. It's not the district's business what the town of Chatham is using it for, just like I wouldn't want to dictate what Harwich is using their property for if we were to surplus back to them. So I would rather have it be clean and be that we're surplusing the piece of land back. That's what the vote would be. My hesitation with that, even though that's what I would do, would be that then the town of Chatham, if the feasibility study, let's say, falls through and it doesn't make sense or it doesn't work, they would then be able to use that land for something else. And I'm not saying that they would put something there that was dangerous or anything, but we no longer would have control over what, or not even saying control, I don't like that word, but we would no longer be able to have a voice in what is on that piece of property. And we shouldn't, is what I'm saying. If we've leased it out, they should be able to put what they want, but then we're putting ourselves not knowing what's going to go there, and if the feasibility study doesn't work out, it's not going to be low-income housing. What is going to go there, or the town just owns it and it continues to just be a vacant lot? I don't know. Those are my thoughts.
Ms. Jolly?
I'd like to speak specifically to that. So, one, I want to caution us against using the term low-income housing. We're not being asked to lease anything for low-income housing. We're being asked to consider leasing it or declaring it surplus for the purpose of affordable and attainable housing. It's very different.
and Katie Donovan, I'm sure, could speak to this better. There's affordable with a capital A, affordable with a lowercase a. They mean different things. There are different requirements for how people can be selected to live in those different ways that housing is defined. That's not area of our expertise. So again, I would ask Katie to speak to that a little bit more. But my bigger point is that I firmly believe it's in the district's best interest to stipulate that that land could be used for workforce housing. We know that it's been tough to fill positions within our district because there is not enough housing. We know that the housing is a crisis in Chatham specifically. I think this would be a very wise way for the district to play a little tiny part in this complex solution that's needed to address the housing crisis. Specifically knowing that it would be in the interest of the district to have more housing available for potential teachers, for potential students to come and fill our seats in our district. I would be very much in favor of declaring the surplus with the stipulation that it is specifically for affordable and attainable housing. And if not that, then I would love to see a stipulation that it's released back, or we are able to obtain it back as a district. If a feasibility study were to indicate or identify that it wouldn't work for the town's needs in that area, I wouldn't want it to be just kind of out of our hands and then, well, then it's an empty lot or I don't even know, anything. I think specifically tying our declaration of surplus for the purpose of affordable and attainable housing is really important, and I would very much support that.
Ms. Stout?
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to lower my hand.
Okay. Katie, can I ask you a question? I think you said it when you were looking at that map. So when I was looking through this, I was focused on that one parcel between Stepping Stones and the bike trail, but then you mentioned something about the parcel behind the fields. Is that part of what we're talking about, or is that something for the future and you're just thinking about that?
So the initial report of the select board on April 12th was specific to the area that runs between Stepping Stone roads and the bike trail. It was suggested that at that meeting that we may also want to look at the area to the west of the ball field. Again, as I said, we were specifically originally looking at the area between Stepping Stone Trail, and I think that would probably be our initial request. Although if we were to do a feasibility study, I think that we could look at both areas at the same time. And again, it's, what the school committee would like to consider. Again, the original request was specifically this fraction here.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Scott?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have a lot of thoughts going on. I watched the select board meeting in Chatham when they discussed it, and I also agree. I think that a lot of the conversation that we had regarding that same plot of land, Council on Aging, the safety issue, I agree, Sharon, that we did have a lot of conversation about that, and I think that had a lot to do with the quantity of cars that would be going in and out of that area, and also anytime there might be an event, and the coming going, whereas I feel like if there is housing in that section, it would be a limited number, and therefore wouldn't be that large of a quantity of people. There wouldn't be that many people going in and out through that area. I see that it is a more residential area across the street, so it would fit in there. Although I do also have that hesitation that Jackie mentioned, which is where I agree with Danielle, that I think having that stipulation in there stating that we're willing to declare it surplus if we so desire, it's not just a generic blanket, we're going to declare it surplus. I do have some hesitation with the additional piece between the baseball field and the Great Hill neighborhood. But I think it would be an interesting piece to see what they would be developed with the feasibility study. I actually have a view of that area out my window right now. So I'm curious to see how that would actually be developed. So I think it's an interesting conversation to have. I think it's a different conversation than the Council on Aging building going in that space. That's it for now. Thank you.
Okay. We go to Dr. Carpenter and then Missy Brett Long.
Meredith?
Oh, yes, Terry.
Yes, if I could make a comment.
Yes, of
I
course.
agree, Nancy just alluded to. I am remiss in that I have not studied the second option that the select board voted for. However, right at this stage, I would support the initial housing need of Chatham and identify that section on Stepping Stone as surplus. A lot has happened in the last 2 or 3 years since our last decision, and excuse me. And yet, I think the issue that's raised by the select board is one that is very valid. So I, right at this stage, at least the first part of what we've been discussing, I would be supportive of that being declared as surplus. Thanks, Meredith.
Yep, thank you. Sure.
I just have
Mic on. I just have a couple clarifying questions. The west side property that you're talking about, so there's the initial like teardrop piece that we're talking about on Stepping Stones Road. The other piece, the way I read it, I thought it was behind the baseball field, which actually abuts Earl's Way and Great Hill. Whoop.
Yes.
Yes, that's correct. If you discussed it, it's under where my house is right now, in this area up here.
Okay, so when they said Great Hill, all I could picture was down near the field hockey field, and that's the way I have to picture it, where there's like conservation on one side. So it's not that far down. Okay. And my second clarifying question is, Goose Pond property area is still on our warrant for the town of Chatham, and we just purchased 5 acres on 137 as well, and these are all for potentially the same use?
Yes. So the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board of Trustees voted to move forward with the purchase of approximately 3.5 acres of buildable land on that parcel. And that would be strictly for affordable housing, which would be up to 100% of the area median income. There's a possibility that that could go up to 110% of the area median income. So strictly affordable. So the other, again, the other parcel that you mentioned is on for the town meeting this coming Saturday, and that is a town-owned parcel on Middle Road. And the article that was put forth by Community Housing Partnership was that approximately 15 acres of that parcel be set aside for conservation. I believe it was just over 4 acres aside for affordable and attainable housing. And attainable housing would be the next level of housing above 100 or 100% of the area median income for basically for workforce housing for families that make above that 100% AMI, but really can't afford to break into the current market rates.
So how many total acres is that? That's a buildable?
The Middle Road parcel?
Yeah.
There's a total of 19 acres there, but there are two articles on the town meeting warrant. One has been sponsored by the owner of all 19 acres of the parcel, and then the Community Housing Partnership proposed an article that would on 15 acres, but then keep approximately 4 acres aside for housing.
And the 137 property was 5 acres, but only 3.5 for?
Right, there's approximately 3.5 acres there of buildable land, and that's because there's an easement that runs through the property for the bike trail.
And this is 2 acres, correct?
This front portion here is approximately 2.2 acres.
And how much of that is buildable?
We're not sure yet. That's what we would be able to be determined by the feasibility study.
Okay, great, thank you.
Dr. Carpenter?
I know this is just piggybacking on what Danielle has said and what Terry has said, but I firmly believe that, to kind of loop back to Sharon's question, what has changed in the last 2 years? The housing situation has changed appreciably in the last 2 years, and it's created a situation that I think really threatens the quality of the school district when you are offering positions to your number one candidates and repeatedly hearing from them that they can't afford to live here. That puts us in a bind, and it has happened again and again and again in the last 2 years. So I do believe that we have an opportunity here to be part of a collaborative solution, and I do think it's in our best interest to go and support any sort of affordable, attainable housing that that our staff could use, or even housing that frees up other housing within the area that our staff can be in.
Ms. Stout?
She have her hand up?
She does.
Nancy does.
All right, we'll move to Ms. Scott.
I just wanted to say thank you, Jackie. I corrected my mistake. I was looking at a different map and was focusing in on the wrong area. So the Earl's Way with the baseball field, not the photo. Thank you.
Mr. Dykens.
Okay, did you call on me, Meredith?
I did.
Meredith?
I did call on you.
Okay. I'm wondering if the town, what?
Go ahead, Sharon.
I'm wondering if the town could have their surveyor or somebody mark that out with tape or some sort of, any of us like myself that would be interested in walking it.
Still marked out.
And both parcels, if we're talking about both parcels, where that is, so we could look very much more specifically for that.
Ms. Seabrett Long?
Sharon, it is.
Any reason?
It is pretty much marked out by the bike path, and then of course it's 600 feet, I think, off of the sidewalk. And then I believe up to the lots that abut it, it was marked when they initially did this with stakes, and I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that those stakes are still there in the ground and they have orange tops, unless the town took them out. But I do believe those surveyor stakes might still be there, but someone from the town might be able to answer that better.
I do see Mr. Dykens with his hand up.
If somebody could,
thank you for recognizing me, and I'm here to lobby for your serious consideration of declaring the state so we can develop affordable and attainable housing. And I'm not going to repeat everybody's points, and they've been excellent, But we have an acute and dire need here in this town, and we are really playing catch-up in many ways. I think the town of Harwich and the town of Orleans and Dennis have done a better job than Chatham in affordable housing. We have, as a board, over the last 2 years or so, 3 years, we really have focused on identifying properties that would be possible, whether we owned it or whether they were privately owned. And we have the Buckley property under consideration. We have purchased the land on Route 137. We'd love to be able to have this land declared surplus. And I want to speak to Sharon's point. When the Council on Aging was being concerns about traffic velocity, et cetera, but it didn't fit with the neighborhood. That was my primary objection. This is a residential neighborhood. It's near schools, it's near the bike path, and it just didn't fit. To do affordable/attainable housing on this piece of property would fit, and it would fit very nicely because the schools are nearby. And so I would welcome your saying, hey, look, guys, I think that's a fine, it's fine stricture. I think that's intelligent. And that's why we're interested in having you declare this land surplus. We're basically hopefully seeding our success, our elementary school success, and the rest of our school success in the region by having younger families able to get into the housing market here via an affordable, attainable way. So it's just at least do a feasibility study and see how many units we can get in there. I don't know exactly what we're going to do there, and I don't think Katie knows either, but at least if we know the land's available, then we would move forward then and come up with some good planning. So that's my pitch. I am lobbying about this, and you know my history with the region, and so I really would hope you could declare it surplus and we could get more young families here in town, because we have a lot of catching up to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dykens. And I agree I agree that this project is, it fits better on that piece of land than the last project that we were discussing. So I think more questions, discussion, Ms. Gaines?
I agree with what everybody said. I personally am a very big advocate for affordable and attainable housing, and really happy that this is being put in front of us. And I just wanted, I think Select Board Member Dykens had covered the student enrollment, because I also wanted to bring that to our awareness, because it's not only the hiring, but we, particularly in Chatham, because that's, we've been having lots of conversations about Chatham Elementary School. So I guess I really just want to echo what Jackie and Danielle have said, because I think our intentions would be good for this, but how do we know? First of all, I'm just looking at the process, so it has to go in front of town meeting. And I think I'm just like, well, what happens if it's voted down? Then what happens? I guess this is what Jackie was saying. I just wish there was some type of guarantee somewhere in this process that it will be used for affordable and attainable housing. I don't know how that can be guaranteed, and I guess that's what I'm looking for.
Well, I wonder if that, to Danielle's point, I wonder if that's something that we can put in our motion, but I'm not sure. I think we would have to do a little research, maybe even check with council.
Yeah, because we don't, I guess I would just say, because we don't know how long this will take. We're still looking at several motions, several town meeting articles, then we'll move to a feasibility study. So there's a whole bunch of things that have to happen. I don't know how long that might take, and what if we get a change over at the Chatham Select Board and everybody has a different thought? And so I guess I'm just trying to see how we can guarantee this.
Right. I wonder if we kind of process this and then bring it back to our next meeting to have a potential vote. Ms. Tolley?
Yeah, and I wonder if that might be something that Ms. Donovan and Ms. Goldsmith might be able to, or I don't know who would be the parties involved to sort of investigate that the process or the language that we would need to have in place, whether it's in our motion or whether it's in the lease, and our motion needs to indicate something in the lease. But if we could have some preparation done between now and the next time that we discuss this, I think that would be very helpful for us to understand how to, I guess, dot our i's and cross our t's so that our best intentions are honored.
Absolutely. Dr. Carpenter?
I could reach out to our district's council and the town manager and potentially have the two, their town council and our council, work on what would be an appropriate motion.
To include that piece of guarantee? Yep. Okay. Ms. Scott, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I was actually going to suggest we speak to our council.
Yep.
In this particular situation, this is not a rush to get it done before town meeting, because nothing's happening at this town meeting on Saturday for this parcel of land. So we can take the time to process to make sure that it's done properly and we use the wording that we're looking for. So, but yes, I was going to suggest that we speak with Mark Terry to see what he might suggest. We declare a specific piece surplus and designate it specifically for the purpose of affordable housing for us.
Thank you. Ms. Stout? Karen? You still have your hand up.
Yes, to go on with what Nancy said a little bit, that there's no rush to do this. And so I want, certainly I support affordable housing, but I know my job here is to make sure that I'm a good steward of the school. That's my role here. And so I'm going to request someone from administration or somebody from the school to walk this with me, so I know what the land is for each parcel. And then also I'm going to ask, from 1963, when this building was built, what did we have at the beginning, fields, and what's been the evolution of use of land there, and why, if we know why. Because we and the town of Chatham and Monomoy look at what might be or not in making this decision. Thank you.
Mr. Jenkins?
Thank you. I just had two quick points. I think you get town council and/or regional district council involved, and maybe even together to see how they can craft language and to see how they might be declared surplus, with the caveat that it be used for affordable housing. I think that's the twist. Number one. Number two, to Sharon's last point, I don't think these efforts are mutually exclusive. You are supporting the school. You get young families there that have children that can support the schools in an ongoing way, as well as provide workforce housing that can provide housing for teachers, firemen, policemen, and workforce. So I don't think those efforts are mutually exclusive. In fact, I think very much.
Thank you. Mr. Westgate, I do see your hand, but unfortunately, we don't have any public comment during discussions and reports.
That's too bad, because I feel there's a real urgency, and if I was permitted to speak, I have some points I'd like to make.
Oh, okay. Okay, at the discretion of the chair, Mr. Westgate, you have the floor.
I appreciate that very much, Madam Chair. there is a real sense of urgency that I'd like to convey. Okay, Provincetown's done 110 units, East Ham has up to 107, Orleans 93, Harwich 6 years, Adams had 9 units. We've got a lot of catch-up to do, and we're desperate to attract and retain young families. Demographically, both Chatham and Harwich need to do everything we can to keep our schools strong. It's a Cape-wide challenge. The 31.7 acres on which the middle school is located is owned by 2 Mrsc at no cost, but the 2.2 acres on Stepping Stones Road has tremendous value for housing purposes. It's one of very few parcels that the town owns and whose low cost can be passed on for affordable and attainable housing. Chatham has decades of housing needs unmet and must tackle every parcel it can. It's in the interest of MRSD to make this thing happen. As Mr. Dykens mentioned, some lucky kids will be able to walk to middle school. Chatham is stepping up to the plate, hopefully this Saturday at annual town meeting, and agreeing to pay for the full costs of Chatham Elementary School, over $700,000 a year, something we're not legally obligated to do under the current MOU. So it would be very welcome show of reciprocity if the school committee would yield back to the Chatham or not now, and which is very unlikely ever to be used for school purposes. If you have any way of showing a sense of meaning this evening, I think it would be very positive in terms of town meeting on Saturday. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Westgate. Ms. Gaines?
Yeah, so I know we had said we've got some time on this, but I am curious from the Chatham side, from Town Manager Goldsmith and maybe even Select Board Member Dykens, is there a time? It sounds like we're a little light, but is there a time that you're looking for to hear from us? I'm just curious.
So, speaking procedurally, once the school committee declares it surplus, we have to take it to town meeting, and right now our annual town meetings are every May, so we will be looking to do it for May 2023, I'm sorry, unless we add a special meeting now and then. So this is the #1 priority for the town. At this town meeting, we're committing substantial resources for a preschool program, and this is the first request that the select board has made to the school committee for the surplusing of this. So we respectfully request that you would further consider it, and if you do have a sense of what you're feeling, that we could report back to the board, that would be great, and work with Superintendent Carpenter and legal counsel to hash out the details for that action. The committee is willing to move forward with it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess, so I think that we will seek counsel and bring this back to our next meeting in 2 weeks.
So just out of curiosity, I apologize, just out of curiosity, before we move on from this, do we need any direction for the superintendent or the chair to go ahead and check with town council? Is that, do we need to officially?
Yes,
Okay.
I believe Dr. Carpenter will work with the town administrator and the district council to seek language around.
Okay, so so I would just just for the school committee's sake, can we just maybe get consensus that that's what we're doing? I'm thinking you might need direction from us, formal direction.
Go ahead, Ms. Seibert-Long.
I don't think there's a formal decision. We're not voting, so I think it's just a opportunity to speak to council with options of what it could look like, and whatever it is, you know, he'll give. Mark Terry's really good about giving all different rundowns of how it would work and what the process is, because that's what I'm hearing is the process and the wording and what protects the district, and just getting that far. I'm not thinking we're going to have a vote at our next meeting, because it sounds like Sharon wants to review the property. We need to speak to council. The meeting's not till May of 2023, but we certainly can get something done prior to that, but
Okay, I guess I'm
we've
only...
got other stuff on our agendas as well. So.
Okay, that's fine. I guess only because we know that unless Smart Terry's going to do this out of kindness, we are going to have to pay a fee of some kind. So I didn't know if we just needed some direction officially, some consensus.
Ms. Scott?
Thank you. I'm Tina, that maybe a directive from the committee to either Meredith as chair or Scott to speak with Mark Terry about it. And also, you know, listening to what Jill was saying about bringing back some sort of thoughts or ideas back to the select board in Chatham. And I hate to say a consensus vote, because I don't want to have any sort of vote about it with all the questions that we have, being that this is the first time it's been brought to us. But maybe an indication of interest or an indication of, no thank you, we don't want to, might be an okay conversation that we could have, so that she could say, bring it back to the select board to say, the school committee is considering it seriously, they sound interested, versus we want nothing to do with it. Does that make sense?
It does. And I feel like we have kind of been sharing that. You know, I think that, you know, Sharon wants to look at the property. You know, many of us said that we are more supportive of this project than the last project that came before us for the same parcel. Many of us are supporters of affordable and attainable housing. So I think that as a school committee, unless there's any opposition, we are interested in moving forward in this process. And I think that as a school committee, we can give the administration directive to talk to and work with the town administrator and our district council to kind of think about language around that, as the rest of the committee can kind of digest this a little bit, potentially walk the property, whatever we need to do to bring this back to have more discussion together. Does that feel like something you could bring back to the board, Jill?
Sure, and I'm happy to make our council available as well, so we could have a productive meeting. So yes, definitely. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Oh, Mr. Dykens, do you have one more?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I think you got it down. It's good. Thank you.
All right, great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to the report back on the Costa Rica trip, with Mr. Burns.
Hello, everyone. We've already had some technical difficulties, so we're going to improvise and hopefully it works out okay. The pictures will work. The videos may or may not work. Okay, great. Thanks. So, hello, everyone. Thank you for your time. I was asked by Dr. Carpenter to come and share just the highlights, maybe 5 or 10 minutes of how the trip went. And I can say, just as a summary, it was overwhelmingly a positive, amazing experience. It was just an incredible adventure, and we're back now, and we're still talking about it weeks later. And before I forget, I just want to say thank you to the school committee and Dr. Carpenter 2 years ago when it was approved. It took us 2 years to get there, but we finally did, and it was certainly worth it. So let's get this shared. I'm not super familiar with Zoom, so I might just need a little bit of time. Share sound? Yep. Okay, great, thank you. optimize for video clip. We'll try that. And fingers crossed. Wow, okay. All right. It's a little blurry, but we'll have to do, I suppose. Oh, there we go. Okay. Right. Okay, so I'll just walk you through what we did day by day, and certainly stop me if you have any questions. As soon as I find this, there we go. All right, so day one the traveling was very hectic. Anyone who's gone on an international trip probably can sympathize with that. Day one was just about getting there, and we got there and we had an option to tour San Jose. We decided we just need to acclimate and maybe take the rest of the day to rest and get established. So day one was just kind of a travel day, but things really kicked off during day two, which was our first trip through one of the national parks. It was basically hiking, and just right away we're seeing these things that we've only seen in textbooks our entire lives, and it was just amazing to see a poison arrow frog right there, and they were everywhere, and it was just an amazing start to the adventure. And I don't know can I get that little bar out of the way there, or is that just, it's not that important. Yeah, I want to show you the iguana. I don't know why let's see. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, you think you're seeing things and you'll never see them again, but they are everywhere. The iguanas and the frogs, the wildlife. It's simply amazing. Day two, part of the same day. We did so much, it's hard to keep track. But later that day, on day one, we did our zip lining adventure. Went up a couple hundred feet, and then took about 10 zip lines down to the bottom. Folks who were not fond of heights struggled a little bit with this, but eventually, after they got a few zip lines in, they were doing fine. So this is the first test to see if these videos work. They might be a little choppy, but we'll try. I think they're going to be a little choppy. You'll get the idea. There we go. Next slide. Myself went, obviously, and also 3 other chaperones. Dr. Otto, which you'll see here, he brought his GoPro, which was great. Let's see if we can see this. And also Mr. and Mrs. St. John were invaluable on this trip. We had an excellent chaperone team. Oh, there he is. All right. Next slide. That took us to day 3. Day 3, one of the highlights certainly was horseback riding through the rainforests. Took a path a couple of miles to a river system, and eventually led to an amazing waterfall where the students got a chance to swim. And riding the horses is just something that not a lot of people get to do. I think that was the first time for myself and a lot of the other students, so that was a really, really amazing part of the trip. We got some video of that as well. Again, Dr. Otto, he's got all the good footage. I mean, we had hundreds of pictures and video which he collected and shared with the entire group. So I just picked the ones that would kind of share the experience most effectively. It should start. This one is struggling a little bit. Okay, we'll move on to the next one. We'll just see if this one looks a little better. That's probably as good as it gets. and apologize for the video. Day 4 is when we took an hour boat ride, approximately an hour, to one of the islands off of one of the national parks, which is amazing. And the vendors explained to us that this was one of the islands that was very similar to the major island where they filmed the first Jurassic Park, which was a much further ride away, but this was supposedly very similar, and this was just an amazing experience. We got to the island, we got to the beach, and it was kind of all about the snorkeling. You don't really see it there, but when you get under the water, you definitely see it, and I hope this video works because you'll get to see what we saw when the students were snorkeling. Try this one out. This one has a little bit of sound. Dr. Otto's GoPro in action there. There's one more. Where I made it to the top. I just wanted you to see what we, see the people on the surface, the students and everyone, once you get up there to kind of where we were. Okay, moving on. Day 5, we went to an organization called Kids Save the Rainforest, and their whole mission is about conservation, planting trees, maintaining biodiversity, and one of their major focuses was to rehabilitate animals. Just like anywhere, they had issues. There's so much wildlife of sloths being hit by cars or being electrocuted, and various other injuries to animals, and they take them in, they rehabilitate them, they try to reintroduce them back into their natural habitat. Sometimes that's successful, sometimes it isn't, but that's kind of their entire mission. So this was the day where the students had a chance to do some volunteer work after we learned about the animals and their diets and their medical care. Let's get to this next slide. This was one of the interns that worked there. There are a lot of people that come from all over the world to help out with this mission, which is pretty amazing. We got to see them, and the students got to help clean out some of their enclosures and volunteer and help out that team there with that program. So that was a really good opportunity for them. Okay. Day 6, we're getting close to the end here, was all about traveling through this mangrove forest river system, which is its own amazingly unique ecosystem, and some pretty interesting wildlife along the way, which we will see in a minute. So this is us going down the river to see some of these plants and animals.
What's the other group? You guys have
Now the tour guides knew exactly where to take us. There was a very particular group of capuchin monkeys that were very territorial, and were not too fond of us being in their territory. And it was surprising even to me, and it was pretty amazing. I'll skip to that part and we'll see if we can get that to play. It's one of the highlights of the trip. A little terrifying for some. Let's see. I'll go back here. Let's play that. Good. Not this part. That's here we go. And there was more than one. They were kind of they were above us, to the sides. They were kind of checking out the boat, and yeah, it was pretty amazing.
So the key for him is a kind of challenge. There is one May Alpha that's gonna be in charge of control the troop.
Here we go. And you can hear one of the tour guides. I can't overemphasize how amazingly professional and friendly the vendors we worked with were, and how educational it was to be completely immersed in these ecosystems. that, and also culturally, learning. The students were speaking little bits of Spanish before we left, and it was just an amazing opportunity to learn a little bit of the language and the culture in addition to the science education that they got along the way. And then on the final night, which I think was later this day, we also did, we didn't have good footage of a canoe trip that we took around an island system to a beach. It was all about teamwork, 5 or 6 of us in the canoe, all paddling together and getting to the beach, and we spent the time there. It was pretty amazing. And then finally, the last dinner, we got a chance to get experience with traditional culture, dance and music from Costa Rica, which was incredible. Hopefully this video will play of one of the musicians. Let's see if this works with sound.
Es como si yo fuera la semilla, me huele a tierra fértil el sendero, llenando de ilusión mi alma sencilla. Soy tico porque un agua de morada me engalana la mirada, me impresiona de verdad.
All right. And by the end, these 4 were truly professional. I mean, amazing performers, and they got every single student up and dancing, and it was incredible. I think I ran and hid somewhere where they couldn't find me, but everybody else did the dancing. So it was a great way to finish the trip. And then after that, we came back, and we're very thankful. There were no issues with COVID. Everybody tested negative, yeah, that was it.
Sounds very exciting.
Yeah, it really was, and we're very, very thankful to have gone, and hopefully 2 years from now we can do it again, because I think it was a very popular trip, and the students and the parents seem to be really enthusiastic about it, so it turned out great.
If you don't mind stopping your share
sure.
so we can see everybody.
Absolutely.
Any questions, comments? Ms. Tolley?
I did, yeah, thanks. I really appreciated the presentation, and my son is obsessed with animals and the rainforest right now, so I feel like I was also watching it with, knowing how much he would have appreciated this too. Question though.
Sure.
So this was a science-focused trip. I was wondering if in the future, if there would be the opportunity, or if there would be any consideration given to also having it be like a Spanish
Yes, originally
program as well.
Right, when we were up to 72 registrations at one point before COVID hit, we had a lot of chaperones, and we asked in particular a Spanish teacher in the district to come along with us to help out with that. And that's more than I expected. The cultural education that we got was amazing, because so many the people of Costa Rica speak English very well, and going back and forth between English and Spanish, it was a great way to kind of pick up conversational Spanish, and it was a great opportunity for that. So that's certainly something that could be formally incorporated, I would believe. Yeah.
Ms. Gaines?
I think if I remember correctly, when this came in front of us, we had that conversation about Spanish, didn't we?
Right, probably, yeah.
I believe we did,
Yeah.
so that's good to hear. Just 2 things. Mr. and Mrs. St. John, were they parents?
No, they're not parents, they're teachers here.
Oh, I didn't realize, okay.
Yep.
All right, just curious. And yeah, and the other thing, in addition to it being a science trip, and I guess possibly Spanish, I was noticing how physical the trip was.
Yes,
Yeah.
very physical.
So, yeah, and I'm just curious, I mean, it's happened already, but for the next time, I guess, will that be part, because it seems to me there needs to be a level of physical fitness
Yes.
to go on a trip like this.
And that's another thing that I maybe underestimated a little bit, but when you get there and you're going through the activities, being in great physical shape certainly helps, because it's nonstop, hiking, swimming, horseback riding. We did stop periodically. There were a couple of folks who had some symptoms of dehydration. We were thankful. World Strides, the travel company, they got us in touch with a doctor, and we walked through the symptoms, and he said, we think this is just dehydration, and then they hydrated and they recovered fine, but the heat and the sweating and the not staying hydrated and not being prepared for the physical activity can be detrimental, and that's something that I'll definitely emphasize going forward, that's part of it.
Right.
Which is great, because, that's what it's all about, to get out there and to real ecosystems, out of the classroom, learning in that way is really what it was all about, so, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
That's right.
All right, well, thank you so much. It's really just nice, it was nice to hear Mrs. Barnes talk about her London trip. It's great that you're here talking about the trip to Costa Rica, so I'm glad that our kids are traveling again, so.
Absolutely.
Thank you for
Yeah.
taking it on.
Yeah, thank you for the time, I appreciate it.
Have a great night.
All right, you too.
All right, moving on to just kind of a follow-up from our conversation 2 weeks ago, thinking about a new member to join the Strategic Planning Steering Committee. So I'm just wondering if there's any volunteers that would like to do that. Right now, Ms. Tolley and Ms. Stout are currently on the steering committee, so I didn't know if anyone else would like to join that.
I have a question, just clarifying question. So we have a member from Harwich and a member from Chatham. So what was the thought? Just remind me of why we might need a third person.
Actually, after talking with our rep from Mrsc, Jim Hardy, he shared that, the steering committee should function exactly as a subcommittee. And on our subcommittees, we have 4 members, 2 from each town. And so the logic was, right now there's 2, maybe we need to have 4, but let's at least start with 1 and see if there's another person who could come into the fold to have more voices from the school committee present on that subcommittee or steering committee, whatever we are calling it.
And I think the idea with this, because we were calling it a steering committee, is that it's temporary. I mean, it's long-term temporary, but it's not one of our formal subcommittees. I think that's why we went with steering committee. So, potentially 1 or 2 members would be great to join to just get this work moving forward.
Well, if nobody's going to throw their hand up, I mean, I noticed that Jessica's not here. We could volunteer her. But I'm happy to put my hand in if you feel like we need a third person. I'm happy to step in.
Okay, wonderful. Anyone else? All right, so we will add Ms. Gaines to that steering committee. And we will move on to summer. Ms. Tolley?
Before we do that, I wonder about, because then we would have 2 Harwich and 1 Chatham, and to operate as a subcommittee if we were, is it appropriate to appoint Jessica to be on the subcommittee or steering committee as well, in her absence?
We can put it on the agenda for next time.
Okay.
So that's why I asked the question, is why was the third, and that's why I was trying to understand, because we always try to balance on the committees.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So we will put it on the agenda for next time to confirm that. Moving on to the summer school committee meeting schedule to set dates.
I'll start. Okay. That motion.
We do not, I don't think we have a calendar in our packet, but I have a calendar here.
Madam Chair, if I may?
Yes.
We had, I believe, on the school calendar in the rear, there were some temporary dates that I had entered. One was the Thursday, I believe it's the 14th. We have to have 1 school committee meeting before the 15th because of the way the fiscal year rolls. So you'd have to have a meeting before the 15th for warrants particularly. And then there were 2 other dates, the 2nd and 4th Thursday in August, that were temporarily there. I think one maybe would be a meeting and one would be used more as a workshop, but.
Okay, so 1 meeting before July 15th and 1 No, July 15th.
July 15th, sorry.
Yep,
The June
and
date's
then,
already set.
and then 2 meetings in August, potentially.
All of June.
So one meeting before July, so we have one.
So we have one on June 9th, and we have one on June 23rd. So we could potentially have one on the 7th, but that, I don't know if we want to do that. I believe that the 14th probably is our best option for that meeting that will be right before the 15th.
Will the 23rd not suffice for prior to the 15th? No, not enough time, okay.
So are we okay with the 14th being the July meeting? Ms. Gaines?
I'm perfectly fine with that. Oh, hold on. Turn my mic on. I'm perfectly fine with that, but I also remember from last year, it was Jackie who proposed Wednesdays, and I can't remember what your thought process was, but we ended up going with Wednesdays, and I can't remember why. And are Wednesdays better than Thursdays over the summer?
Yes.
Yes or no? Oh. But I do remember us doing that, and there was a thought process with it for some reason.
So it was for long weekends, maybe? Not sure. I don't know, that was a long time ago. Sports? Sports, maybe, summer activities, vacations.
So I would either propose July 14th or the 13th. 13th is a Wednesday, and
Does
then...
anyone
yeah.
have, is anyone opposed to changing it to Wednesdays? Whoa, I lost my words.
Can we do Wednesday, July 13th?
Wednesday, July 13th.
I also remember we put in a spot for 2 meetings in August.
We
I'm
did,
thinking
and
we're
we
gonna
used
really
them.
just use one.
No, we actually used two.
We were hoping you would
Yes.
only use one.
Right.
Right, to put a placeholder in, but the intention is that we're only going to use one in
Right.
August, but.
Right.
Okay, so,
Oh, I'm being told through my mic here in my ear, no, I'm just kidding, that the administrators have something on the 13th. So we will be without
We'll
administrators.
do the 14th.
14th for July.
We could.
That's so funny.
We'd have the tech help.
And then do the
And then-
11th in August? Or excuse me, the 10th?
The 10th and the 24th? Yes? Are we okay with that?
Yep. Is everybody, what about in the Zoom room?
Maybe reserve one of those for a workshop as opposed to a second meeting. That's maybe different.
We didn't we wait for our workshop till like October last year?
Yeah, but COVID has changed, so
Oh.
they shifted things out, so, but it's completely up to you.
Maybe do the August 10th workshop. Because
So-
we're going to need to get back together right before school starts anyway, 'cause there's always something to do.
Okay. So potentially workshop on August 10th and regular meeting on August 24th.
So this is where we have the general consensus, Thursday the 14th, and in August, Wednesday the 10th and 24th, with potentially a workshop and not a proper meeting.
Yes.
Okay, general consensus?
Do we have a general consensus on that?
Yeah, let's check to see if they heard.
I see nodding.
Yes, we're nodding.
So I don't see Sharon nodding.
Or Terry.
Or Terry. Is Terry still there?
Yes, their videos are. Okay.
Just, Madam Chair, just a quick question on time. So are we looking still at 6:30 or are we looking at 6? For some reason, 6 o'clock sticks in my head, but I don't know why.
6 is great. Get her done.
Can we do 6 in the summer?
That might be an issue for you and probably Sharon if she's listening.
Sharon is listening right now.
6 is tight, it's always tight for me, but, I do that when we have executive session, and so it can be done.
Do we want to move it to 6 for the
Yeah.
summer?
I would confirm with Sharon. I don't know if she can hear us.
I can check with her later.
Okay, that's fine.
All right, so we'll go with that.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock, just for those summer meetings?
For the 14th, the 10th, and the 24th?
Yep. Okay, great. Moving on to the third quarter financial report and third quarter transfers. Mr. McMillan.
Hello. Good evening, School Committee Manager. I apologize for not being in the room with you, although I'm at the very tail end of my COVID, so probably don't want me in the room with you. So I circulated the Quarter 3 finance for FY22 in your packets. We're just heading into the home straight really toward the end of the year, and the big picture is that the district's finances are looking in good shape. Our revenue is up and our expenditure is down, and this is likely to lead to a healthy excess and deficiency fund at the end of the year to offset assessments in FY24 and beyond. So revenue is up because we have federal funding related to COVID, including the grants, FEMA reimbursement, and food service reimbursement as we continue to for meals for free, and those are reimbursed by the federal government. And on the expenditure side of things, our school choice and charter assent continue to be below budget, which is good news, and that's because more students are choosing to stay in Monomoy and not attend other public school districts. In addition, we purchased some of our transportation and out-of-district tuition services last year for this year, so that saves us some money, as has the health insurance premium holiday. There also was last year an increase in turnover, and as we hire new staff, often they come in at slightly lower rates than the exiting staff. That saved us some money, and a downside of saving money is also that we've had delays in filling some positions, so we've not been paying salaries as we've been trying to fill those positions. Yeah, generally positive outlook for the district. I've also included in this report this information on student activity accounts. Not much change there since the last quarter report. Class of 2022 account continues to be the busiest account. Finally, all the budget transfers are included. No transfers between major accounts, and all within major accounts, so nothing for you to vote on in terms of transfers. And so that's my quick version of what's in the report. Are there any questions to the report?
Any questions or discussion?
Just a reminder for myself. So when somebody leaves to go to the tech, does that count as school choice? Is that a $5,000? Or is that a full? Oh, go ahead.
So the tech has a separate assessment that they give to each town.
Right, but when our students here, like, what's our obligation as a school? So if, well, I don't know, so if somebody comes here, I guess it doesn't matter, does it? So the town's still paying?
Yeah, so when students leave us and go to Cape Tech has a separate assessment that they give to each town based on the number of students from each town in their larger district.
Okay, yeah, I had to refresh my mind how that worked. Okay, that's fine.
Any other questions, discussion? All right, moving right along to the extended school year instructional assistant rate. Is that you, Mr. McMillan, again, or?
Yes,
okay.
That is me again, I'm afraid. So we have our specific hourly for teachers and instructional assistants who work on the extended year program, and in the past, until our rate for the instructional assistants has been $20, we would like to increase that to $25, as we're finding it hard to get enough instructional assistants to help us out on that program.
Okay, any questions or discussion? Oh, we have Terry. Terry, are you still with us currently?
Meredith, yes, I am.
Okay, great. So without any questions or discussion, I will take a roll call vote, or, excuse me, I will look for a motion. Ms. Seabrett Long.
I move to approve an increase in the hourly rate for instructional assistants working in the extended school year program from $20 an hour to $25 an hour.
Second?
I'll second.
Roll call vote. Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Ms. Tully?
Aye.
Ms. Games?
Aye.
Ms. Seabrett Long?
Aye.
And I am an aye. Moving on to the approval of a new student activity account for the Diversity Club. Mr. McMillan?
So we have had a diversity club at the high school in the past, but it had been dormant for more than 2 years, and so we closed it down. But I'm pleased to say that there is more student activity there again, and the students have asked us to open that club up again. So we'd like to get your approval to creating another student activity account for the diversity club.
Excellent. Any questions, discussion? Motion? Ms. Seabrett Long?
I move to approve the establishment of a diversity club at the high school and to authorize the receipt and expenditure of funds related to that activity.
Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote. Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Ms. Tully?
Aye.
Ms. Games?
Aye.
Ms. Seabrett Long?
Aye.
And I am an aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Moving on to subcommittee reports. We had a superintendent evaluation subcommittee meeting last week, I think? Last week. Where we had a meeting with Dr. Carpenter for his formative evaluation. So that is just seeing how things are moving along, or how things have been moving along through the year. Dr. Carpenter, I don't know if you want to do this or you want me to do this?
I can share what's in the packet. So in the packet is a printout of the state's directions on how a school committee follows the Massachusetts model educator evaluation system for superintendents. There's a little handout that has my goals for the year that we talked about at the beginning of the school year, and a brief little status report on where I am with each of those goals. Also, as you go through and fill out your evaluations, there are 21 indicators, 4 standards and 21 indicators. So each year for the committee, I sort of highlight in yellow where I think I fell with those standards, and for each indicator, at the end of each standard, just do a little summary. But yeah, and those indicators cover sort of the curricular piece, curricular instruction and assessment piece. They cover management and operations, school culture. So it kind of is a sort of larger picture of what one does for the job. And then there is within the packet, the packet on the evaluation system, there is on page, I can flip to it, so it's like page, and I think it's stapled, but there is the evaluation that school committee members fill out kind of midway through the packet stapled together. And I'll turn that over to the chair and vice chair.
So what we talked about last week is what is printed underneath his goals as the status update for May 2022. And this we can use as our reference as each school committee member moves forward to think about that summative evaluation for Dr. Carpenter. So what we need to each individually do is fill out the entire Appendix C. So we need to rate each section, and there is a section, a small summary section under each standard, but we can just do one summary each. We don't have to do a separate summary for each standard, but you do have to rate each standard. Does that make sense?
Yes.
James.
And I believe, are you the chair of the super eval?
Yes.
Okay, so you're the chair. All right. So I think we just have to turn in page 2 and 3 to you, right?
So this year we need to do all of the pages and turn them all in.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yes. But the vice chair is going to summarize all of our individual summaries. So we all have an individual summary that we will submit to Ms. Zebrat-Long, and she will put it together as one school committee summary.
Okay.
Yes, and I'll add for anyone who's new to the evaluation, excuse me, Jackie Seibert-Long, Vice Chair. I'll add that each member also gets an opportunity to read their summative of the superintendent as an individual. And then at the end, in my role, I would do one type of general summative of the committee. So there's an opportunity for both.
So looking at my calendar again, I'm wondering if on the June 9th meeting, I know, I'm sorry. So if we were to have the individual summative summaries read on June 9th, and then came back on the 23rd for the vote and the compiled summary, that would suffice.
Right. So there has to be, the summative has to be prepared by June 9th, no later, and that would be considered the first reading, and then you would have to come back and do a second reading by June 23rd, and that's when the second reading and final vote would happen.
So the combined summary needs to be done by June 9th?
Because of that, you have to have the reading first and second. And it has to be uploaded to the state by June 30th.
All right, so Ms. Vice Chair, the 26th.
So I would need evaluations by the 19th? No. I need to have the summative at this meeting for the first reading by June 9th, right?
Yes,
And our next meeting is the 26th.
correct.
So Madam Chair, we've got I think a hand or two.
Ms. Scott?
I was just going to suggest that in years past, what we've always done is you finish your evaluation by whatever date the vice chair decides, so that she has enough time for our June 9th meeting to compile a summary. So our evaluations are finished, I'm just going to throw dates out there, by June 1st, so that Jackie has those evaluations in her hand by June 1st, so that she has time to then do a summative evaluation at our June 9th meeting. So at our June 9th meeting, we each read our own summary of the evaluation, and then at the end, Jackie would read the summative for the entire committee at the first reading, and we would vote so that it can be uploaded to the state before the end of June.
Perfect. That sounds like a great timeline, Ms. Scott. How does that work for you, Ms. Zebrat-Long?
I'd love to have your completed evaluations by June 1st, please.
Are we okay with that?
I'm fine with it. I will not be at the June 9th meeting, so can someone read on my behalf?
I would love to.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Tolley?
So, in what format or how do we submit to you, Jackie, our individual evaluations?
Well, it varies. I've had them hard copy with ink, and I've also had them hand delivered, and I've also had them emailed, so whatever you'd like.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, great. So we will have them to you by June 1st, bless you. And we will have our first reading on June 9th and bring it back for a vote on the 23rd. Games.
I had just a quick request, and I know this was in our agenda packet, but is there because I'd like to do mine and email it. Is there a version of this that will open up where I can type into it?
I can look for it.
Thank you.
I'll send it out
Okay, thank you.
committee-wide.
With the timeline?
I will do it, hopefully by tomorrow.
That'd be lovely. Okay, moving on, Dr. Carpenter, to the superintendent's report.
All right, so let's start with just congratulations. Not only is Miss Barnes a wonderful chaperone in London, but Miss Barnes has also been selected as the recipient of the 2022 Don Salvucci Award for Excellence in Promoting Civics Education from the Massachusetts Council for Social Studies. Rachel's been honored for her involvement in Project Citizen, where she has served as a mentor for the past 20 years. She'll be awarded the Excellence in Teaching Social Studies Award this Saturday at a conference in Sturbridge. Then I would like to just thank on behalf of Diana Rose, one of our special education teachers at Harwich Elementary School, who would like to sort of acknowledge all of those who contributed behind the scenes for the April Autism Awareness and Appreciation Month. So included in those that helped support her were the Barrows Excavation, Jeff Gomes, on behalf of himself and Brack's Landing, Christine Gagnon, North Chatham Outfitters, an anonymous donor on behalf of Pilgrim Lodge, Mr. and Mr. Potter on behalf of the Lanyard and SNL Tree Service. She would also ask that we especially thank Cape Sharp and Estis Screen Printing for coming through in the clutch with extra t-shirt orders. Thanks to Krug, Dr. Pepper, Stop and Shop, and Star Market for donating materials for Mr. Weimer's science experiment. And then we had our prom recently, and we would like to thank those that supported the after prom event to help keep our seniors safe. Included in those were the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy, Boston Red Sox, Brack's Landing, Dairy Queen, Daniel Brown, Booze on Main, Cape Cod 5, Cape Roots Market, Cape Shark, Carmine's, Castaways, Chapman Funerals and Cremation, Chatham Candy Matter, Chatham Fire Association, Chatham Orpheum, Chatham Penny Candy, Chatham Perk, Chatham Police Association, Chatham Village Bakery, Chatham Village Market, Chatham Works, Clark Engineering, Attorney William Kroll, Dave's Garage, Derbyfield Kennels, Dunkin' Donuts, Ember, Exit Merch, Family Pantry, Jack Farrell, Freedom Ferry, George's Pizza, Grand Slam, Bumper Boats, Harwich Children's Fund, Harwich Fire Association, Harwich Police Association, Harwich Recreation, Harwich Port Golf, Patrick Hall, Henry T. Crosby and Son, Hyannis Honda, Hyora Publications, Jay's Equipments, Dubas and Sons, Cassirgis Fishing Corp., Keurig and Dr. Pepper, the Lanyard Restaurant, Lower Cape Dental, Marion's Pie Shop, McGrath Post and Beam, Millie's Trucking, Mom and Pops, New England Gardens, New England Pizza, Newbury Street Hair Salon, Nickerson Funeral Home, North Chatham Outfitters, Panera, Pate's Restaurant, Pilgrim Congregational, Pine Acres Real Estate, Pizza Shark, Rubber Company, Rory's, Sativa, Schoolhouse Ice Cream, Scribano's, Seal Cafe, Shoreline Pools, Dave and Elizabeth Smith, Snow and Thompson Insurance, Solace, St. Martin's Lodge, Chatham, Stella Construction, Stop and Shop, Subway, Sweet Izzy, Sweet Tomatoes, Chatham, Terry's TV and Appliance, Alta Beauty, Whiteley Plumbing, and last but not least, Yankee Ingenuity. They would also like to thank Katie Curry for her help decorating, and also the many parents and chaperones, and then a special thanks to the Chatham Fire, Carolyn Carey, Emily Mitchell, and the Harwich Community Center staff for their help in hosting the event. It's like reading the graduation names.
Every business, I think, right?
Yeah, so it's great to have their support, and I think it's just fantastic to have events that can keep kids safe after a prom. And then in terms of trying to keep people safe, we are going out with a bang when it comes to COVID. Our entire county has leapt in the last 2 weeks from a low incidence or low community risk of COVID to a high community risk of COVID, where the CDC now recommends that those who are indoors consider wearing masks. In terms of our staff, I put something out just to our staff earlier this week that we are really stretched thin. There are little examples. There was an email that went out from Principal Police here at the high school, just letting families know there will be no a la carte. There will be sort of like the basics happening in the cafeteria, just because of staffing. We actually have more staff out now than we have ever had out during the pandemic. And so the last time, we currently have 32 students that we've been tracking the last week and 18 staff. The last time we had a number that was over 15 was just after the first of the year, and the first of the year, the 33 staff then was actually a 2-week number. So the thing that becomes very crippling is it's not only 18 staff who have COVID, there's an equal number of staff who are out taking care of their kids who have COVID. And, and I think we all are 1 degree of separation from somebody who's struggling with it, or, maybe several in the Zoom room, as the case may be. So, so it's challenging. I was on a call with the state last week where they were anticipating that this will be the high point. I can just hope that this is the high point, that we see things start to tick back down. I have gotten 2 emails from concerned community members about wanting to see masks come back. I've emailed back saying I do not see there to be an appetite for that. But I also have been encouraging people to make decisions to keep themselves and loved ones safe. So that's it for COVID. Last but not least, we have Chatham Town meeting this Saturday, Veterans Field, 11 o'clock. We had a unanimous support for our budget and for the regional agreement changes at Harwich Town meeting. I am cautiously optimistic that we'll get support. That we'll get support at Chatham. I believe Michael will finally make an appearance, but I'll be there, and we'll be ready to answer questions. I anticipate there'll be more questions in Chatham than there were in Harwich. We're all set, and there were none. But I think I think there are. I think particularly for Chatham, there is sort of a recollection of how things once were in the district, and how things currently are. So I was going through and just doing some some little reflections, and I had Leah pulling up some numbers. So in terms of school choice, I think many remember back when the district was coming together, and when the district was coming together, and prior to that, when it was Chatham Public Schools, at Chatham Elementary School, just actually over 1/3 of the student population at Chatham Elementary School were school choice students, with 20% of the total enrollment coming from Harwich. As we have come together as a school district, in the first few years, that's what it was like. But as we equalized the program between the two elementary schools, and when we first came together in the first couple of years, Harwich Elementary School had significantly larger class sizes at Harwich Elementary than Chatham Elementary. And part of setting a class size guideline my first budget season was to start to pull those class sizes into to have the two elementary schools operate with the same class sizes and have the same experiences. So what we've ended up seeing in the 10 years since regionalization is Harwich families electing more and more and more to stay at Harwich Elementary School because the experience that they're having at Harwich Elementary School and the class sizes are exactly what they'd find at Chatham Elementary School. So what we see is that we once upon a time had 20% enrollment at Chatham Elementary School. Next year, we anticipate that the enrollment of Harwich students at Chatham Elementary School will be 3% of the total population of the school. Whereas the kids that are coming from other towns, that percentage hasn't changed. That's been running roughly 15% of the population from back then to present. And we see at Chatham Elementary School, very few Chatham children coming from Chatham to Harwich. Next year, we anticipate that there will be 6 Chatham children going to Harwich Elementary School. Generally, what that is there are staff members who live in Chatham, work at Harwich Elementary School, and have their children there. And again, the school choice children coming to Harwich Elementary School has remained relatively between 10 and 12% of the total enrollment in the building. 10 years ago, that's what it is now. So we used to see at the beginning of the district forming, we saw about 10 students from Harwich a year wanting to school choice over to Chatham Elementary School. For the last 2 years, we've had no children from Harwich electing to move, and we use those school choice numbers to sort of equalize class sizes. I anticipate that the class sizes that we'll be seeing at both elementary schools will be right around 16, 17 students per classroom across grade levels. So again, I think there are many that might be at Chatham's Town meeting that remember what it was like 10 years ago, but the difference between the two elementary schools 10 years ago is not what it is today.
Any questions or discussion, Dr. Carpenter? Please?
I just want to thank the town of Harwich for their support. Meredith and I were ready and prepared with our big book of answers to questions. But I just want to thank Harwich for their support. We didn't get any questions. There was no opposition, and I just really appreciate it. I think we did a lot of homework ahead of time. I know I personally was on Channel 18 3 times. So, and then you and I and Michael at least.
Great. All right. So moving on, we have a couple action items to address. The first is bringing back for a second reading policy file JJH that has merged with IJOA and JJHR for the field and day trips. Do I have a motion? Ms. Seabrett Long?
I move to approve file JJH IJOA JJH-R field trips and student travel domestic and international policy as presented at our last meeting.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Ms. Tolly?
Aye.
Ms. Games? Aye. Ms. Seabrett Long?
Aye.
And I am an aye. And we have some surplus items in our packet. Do I have a motion? Ms. Seabrett Long?
I move to approve the declaration of surplus items as presented in our packet from Monomoy Regional High School and Harwich Elementary School.
Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote. Mr. Terry? Mr. Russell?
Mr. Terry.
Or Mr. Terry.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Ms. Tolly?
Aye.
Ms. Games?
Aye.
Ms. Seabrett Long?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, and we did have the presentation of warrants this evening, so I'm looking for a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Roll call vote. Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Ms. Tolly?
Aye.
Ms. Games?
Aye.
Ms. Seabrett Long?
Aye.
And I am an aye, and we will adjourn